Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. Happy Tu B'Shvat. So we're having kind of an amazing day, B'Zrat Hashem, Baruch Hashem, I want to say, that it's Tu B'Shvat. It's the Rosh Hashanah for the Ilanos. It's the Rosh Hashanah for the trees, the New Year for the trees. And it's kind of like a supernaturally warm day here in Baltimore. It's amazing. We just came out a couple of snowstorms and it was like freezing cold. We had massive icicles on our house. And now it's kind of like really warm. It's a little like overcast and rainy, but I wanted to get our tree house in the background, because it's the celebration of the trees, and we see it's something very special that we're celebrating. Hashem created 12 months, and each month He attached a mazel, one of the special constellations of the zodiac, and we're going to talk about the mazel for this the month of Shevat. And we're going to talk about how Shevat is a special month where it's the beginning of the Geulah. It's the beginning of the redemption and the special time in the Shovavim we're in. We'll talk about that. And we're going to start out, we're going to get some help today from Rabbi Gad Erlanger, his amazing book, Sign of the Times. I think this is a English translation from the original Hebrew. And he teaches a lot about the mazalos, the mazel, the zodiac of each month. And he says something really incredible. So the mazel of the month of Shevat is the deli. It's the bucket. So I believe in the Greco-Roman system, in their zodiac, it's called Aquarius, and it's about drawing water. And then water is compared to the Torah. The Torah flows like water, and it has Torah and water, they give life, and it has a purifying aspect. So there's a purifying aspect of water, like a mikvah, so you can have a ruchnius, a spiritual purification of the actual neshama, of the actual soul, and then physical. In the physical world, we can take a shower, we can take a bath, we can just physically clean ourselves. So water has this amazing cleansing, purifying ability, and the Torah has that too. So he quotes the Midrash Tanchuma from Parsha Hazinu, and it says something interesting. So at first, it says that the keshes, in the bow, in the month of Kislev, and in the zodiac this is called Sagittarius, that it shoots a man up, it shoots a person up really high. And it means in the month of Kislev, we reach these incredible high spiritual elevations, and that's the month of the Nisim, the month of the miracles, it's the month of Hanukkah. But before that, we're kind of in the month of Cheshvan, which is sometimes called Mar Cheshvan, like bitter Cheshvan, and that's the month where the flood started, the Mabul, the great flood in the days of Noah started, and this is after the elevation of the month of Tishrei, the great spiritual elevation of like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, and we go through all that spiritual elevation, and then it's like, we're into fall and we're heading towards winter, and then kind of like feel a drop in the month of Cheshvan. And right now, the month of Cheshvan, it doesn't have any major holidays. I believe there's something going to be in the future. It's going to be some connection with the Beis Hamikdash, the building of the third temple, and Cheshvan it'll be revealed. It's Nister, it's hidden right now what the great mystery of Cheshvan is, and that will be revealed. But we're kind of like the mazel of Cheshvan is the Akrab, the scorpion. It's called Scorpio in the zodiac. And we're kind of like in the thickets, like in these weeds and thickets and thorns, and kind of like in Gehenna after the great elevation of Tishrei. But then when we get to the month of Kislev, it's the archer, it's the bow, it's the Sagittarius, and we shoot up in elevation. We shoot up in spiritual elevation, and we have the amazing, the 8 days of Hanukkah, where we enter the supernatural. We go L'mayla min hateva, we go out of the natural world, out of the physical world, way up into the spiritual world. Right, so that's the month of Kislev. So then, what happens after that is the month of Teves, which is very interesting. So Teves, the mazel is the Gedi, the kid goat. It's called Capricorn in the zodiac, and it's interesting because now, after all this journey, we're kind of like reborn. We're very clean and innocent, like the pure white wool of the newborn goat. But there's a secret to this goat, and this goat's going to be what we sing about after the Seder, the Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. So Gadya, I believe, is Aramaic for Gedi, which means kid goat. and we sing the amazing song after the Seder. And this little kid goat has a great potential. And now what we do in the month of Shevat, and why does the redemption begin now? Why does the Geulah begin now? Because we take that bucket of purifying water and it's spilled on top of the little kid goat. And then he's going to be transformed. Okay, so what's special about Tu B'Shvat? So Tu B'Shvat is the 15th in the month of Shvat. And Rabbi Erlanger, he goes on to say that in Eretz Yisrael, most of and I believe this is also quoted from Sefer Pri Eitz Hadar, which was one of the Sfarim that talks about the Tu B'Shvat Seder. But he says that in Eretz Yisrael, in the Pri Eitz Hadar, that most of the rain has already fallen in Eretz Yisrael. So most of the rain that all the trees need to grow the fruit, they've already received it. They already got it. And then the sap in the tree, sap starts to rise up into the tree. And that's the very beginning. So Tu B'Shvat's going to be the very beginning of when that sap is starting to transform into first the blossoms, the flower blossoms, and then eventually the fruit of the tree. So the fruit of the tree is just beginning. The blossom's just beginning. The Geulah is just beginning. This is the beginning of it all right now. And it's kind of amazing because usually it's always, it's snowy, it's rainy. Let me just check this. And now it's like supernaturally warm, even though it's a little gray and overcast. But it's very interesting. We really feel like some superior quality to Tu B'Shvat, and there's something special about this year. We'll see what this year brings. So in the land of Israel, right, the trees have absorbed all the resin from the earth, and now the fruit that's going to grow as a result of the new koach, the new physical and spiritual power that's put into the tree. And then there's a whole halakha of determining maiseros. And I think if things are like a third grown before Tu B'Shvat, it's the year before, and then if they're not, I think it goes on to the next year. So what's going to happen now is that little blossom, the little fruit that's coming, it's just begun. And when are we going to actually see the fruit? We're going to see the blossoms and the fruit in the month of Nisan. So what can happen through this mazel is this little kid goat, this little gedi, he can become the mighty Taleh. He can become the mighty ram in the month of Nisan, and that's the month of Pesach, a Passover. That's where the redemption happens, the Geulah happens. So the ram's called in the zodiac, he's called the Eris. So this is the beginning of the Geulah, and it's a special time. It's called the Shovavim, and it's from the first letter of all the Parshas that we read in this month. And we're going to go through the Parshas a little bit. But first, we're going to take a look real quick in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, and we're going to look at the very first Mishnah. And it's interesting, the Mishnah mentions that there's actually 4 Rosh Hashanahs in the year, which is really like mind-blowing. Shalom, welcome back. We did a little location change because it was getting a little wet and drippy outside. So we're back inside the house where it's nice and dry. So we were talking about that Shovavim is a special period we're in right now, and it's the first letter of each of the Parshas, and we'll go through each of the Parsha. And it's going to talk about the different stages in the Geulah, the different stages in redemption, and the different stages in going to a higher and higher spiritual elevation. And that's what we can all personally do right now. We can all tap into the special ruchnius, special spiritual koach, spiritual power of the Shovavim time. And we'll talk about it. The Shovavim is a little nister. There's a lot of mysteries and hidden secrets in there. We'll talk about that. All right, so we'll go through each parsha. But first, we wanted to go to Masechta Rosh Hashanah, and we're going to see something really interesting. So the first Mishnah we're talking about, there's the 4 New Years. There's the New Year's, the Rosh Hashanah that everyone's familiar with, and the first day of Tishrei, which is what we traditionally call Rosh Hashanah. It's the new year. That's like how we count the years. There's also a Rosh Hashanah in Nisan, which is very interesting. And the ancient kings, like their reign was calculated by the first of Nisan. It would be which year the king it was. And then the Moedim, the holidays, like the first really holiday, everything comes from Pesach, from Passover, and that kind of starts our spiritual journey through the year. We have to get out of Egypt first. We have to leave Mitzrayim. We'll talk about that soon. And we go through all the journey. And then there's a Rosh Hashanah, I believe in Elul, which is dealing with Meiser Behemos, and that's a very interesting subject. And then finally, we're going to deal with Shvat, the month of Shvat, and then it's the Rosh Hashanah for the trees. All right, so let's see what it actually says in the Mishnah. So it says, B'echad b'tishrei Rosh Hashanah le'ilan. Kedivrei Beis Shammai. So on the first of the month of Shvat, it's a special, Be'echad B'Shvat Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan. That in the first of Shvat, first day of the month of Shvat, it's the new year for the trees, Kedivrei Beis Shammai. And then Beis Hillel Omrin B'Chamisha Aser Bo. And on the 15th, it's that's the new year for the trees. And we usually paskin like Beis Hillel, so we paskin like Beis Hillel here, and it's going to be on the 15th of Shvat. Now, I don't know if how good your skills in Lashon HaKodesh are in Hebrew, but you may have picked up that what I actually said was Bi'achad b'Shavat Rosh Hashanah le'ilan. That on the first of the month of Shvat, it's the new year for, and it doesn't say ilanos, it doesn't say the trees, it says for the tree. So the Sefer we talked about a little before, the Pri-Eitz Hadar, he picks up on this kasha, this question, and he says that the tree that it's talking about is the Eitz Chaim, is the tree of life. So it has very mystical implications for Tu B'Shvat, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. And we're going to take our journey now through the different parshas of Shovavim. Right, so it's the first letter of all the parshas, so it's Parsha Shmos, Parsha Vayera, Parsha Bo, Parsha Beshalach, Parsha Yisro, Parsha Mishpatim. And then because we're in a leap year, we have 2 Adars this year, Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni. In a leap year, we add on the Tat. So it's Shovavim Tat, and we also include Parsha Truma and Tetzaveh in our whole journey here. Okay, so Parsha Shmos talks about how we became slaves in Egypt. And there's very hidden secret here. The Arizal says in his Sefer Shar Pesukim, it may have been also in Shar Ruach HaKodesh, but he talks about there's a very hidden secret that one of the things that had to be corrected was to do a tikkun, to do a spiritual fix on something called shomer bris. Guarding, guarding, make sure that we only use the seed, we only use the procreative powers, in a marriage and kedushin to bring children in the world, and then anything else outside of that, or bringing pleasure to our wives, but anything outside of that it's called zera levatala. It's wasted seed, and it has dire, dark negative spiritual consequences that come out of it. So he explains that after, and then it's interesting, you may ask, well, what does this have to do with Tu B'Shvat, or the tree, or the tree of life? And it ties in so beautifully that the Arizal goes on to explain that after Adam and Chava, after Adam and Eve, after they ate from the Eitz Das Tov Ra, they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now that was the one tree that Hashem gave them a specific mitzvah, a specific command not to eat from. They could eat from anything else in the garden, including the Eitz Chaim. And if they ate the Eitz Chaim first, all would have been good. Now what's interesting is the Eitz Das, the tree of knowledge, is actually, it's all the same tree, but it's not the complete tree. So the tree of knowledge of good and evil is the same tree, it's the same trunk as the tree of life, but the tree of life is the much fuller tree, the complete tree. So by only eating through a portion of it, it gave them a blurred vision, and then good and evil came into a person. We got the Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Tov, the evil impulse, the good impulse. Instead of external forces, they became very internal to our nature. And give you a mushroom, I can give you an example that, for instance, science is the Eitz Das Tov Ra. Science is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So it can do good things, like science can, bring new medicines into the world, all kinds of ways to heal people, but it can be very destructive. Bioweapons can be created, like destructive, nuclear, thermal, nuclear, radioactive weapons, massively destructive weapons can be brought with that same science. Now sometimes that can be used to save, and sometimes it can just be used to destroy. Now what's incomplete about that picture is that science itself is all just part of what Hashem's created. But if you only look at part of it, so scientists can just say, oh, all these things exist, all the laws of physics, all the laws of nature exist, but we're not going to give credit to its creator. We're not going to give credit to Hashem, who's created it all and sustaining it all and making it function every day. And then we can just pretend that it's just there randomly. It's just by chance, by mikra, it just happened to all come together. And you'll see there are some scientific theories that go down this path of everything's just random, everything just happened, without seeing the full picture of that everything has a higher spiritual root. And the higher spiritual roots is what comes down into our physical world and creates everything, physical, all the physical matter. Okay, so the first parsha is talking about how we were coming enslaved and in the physicality of Egypt. And then after Adam and Chava ate from the tree of knowledge, Adam, he wanted to divorce his wife, and they were separated for 130 years. And during those 130 years, they didn't have any children. And then the Arizal tells us that when he was just giving his seed, and there's there's deep mystical things that we're not going to go into all of it, but instead of producing children with this zera, it was producing ruchin and shadim, and it was producing negative, physical creations. They were part spiritual, part physical. The shadim are usually called like demons. And it's a whole mystical subject. We're not going to go so much into it, but this Shovavim, this is a time where all that can be corrected, and all kinds of things can be done to correct it. Things like going in the mikveh, like crying over, the waste, instead of producing life, that this all went to death. And these negative forces can really, they can drain a person. They can, stop like the bracha, the shefa coming, the spiritual flow coming down from Hashem. So we want to get rid of these negative forces. But what's incredible about Tu B'Shvat is on Tu B'Shvat we can break these negative spiritual forces simply by eating fruit. Whereas other fixes are like fasting throughout, the period of Shovavim. But today there's a special power that those forces can be broken simply by appreciating the fruit of the tree and having kavana, having a good intention, of making a bracha, making a blessing before we eat the fruit, and then just tying it all back to its spiritual root above and seeing this all from Hashem, this is all Hashem's creation. So, we can make a brei pri hayetz, blessed are you, you made the fruit of the tree, and brei pri hadama, the blessing of the fruit from the ground, the vegetables from the ground, and many other brachas. So it's a powerful day. All right, so we're enslaved in Egypt, and we have to break out of that physicality. We have to break out of the physical desires that are surrounding us, all around us in this world. And Hashem started to help us break free by this grueling slavery, and we were just stuck in the physicality, like literally with like clay, and making the clay into bricks and just building and doing physical labor. And that was like to just make us despise the physical world and make us seek something greater, right? Something higher, something better in this world, a richer life. And so that created like the desire, and we cried out to Hashem. We couldn't take it anymore, and we wanted to break free. And it's interesting because the word for Egypt in Lashon HaKodesh is Mitzrayim. It's a Meitzar. It's the physical constraints and the spiritual constraints that are holding us back. And Pesach, Passover, is when we can break free. Hashem has put a special spiritual power in the world in that time, in the month of Nisan, and we can break free. And like we talked about before, so we can take that little kid goat, in the month of Shevat. And it's interesting because one way we broke free is we did a special mitzvah that Hashem told us to, to tie up on the 10th of the month of Nisan, to tie up this little kid goat, to our beds. And the Egyptians they worship animals, they worship these little kid goats, and we were taking their God, we were taking their Avodah Zarah, their idol worship, and then it was shechted, and that became the Korban Pesach, and we ate it at the Seder, and B'ezrat Hashem, when we get the third temple back, we'll be able to eat the Korban Pesach again. Right, so that's Parsha Shmos. And it was all because when Abraham made the bris bein habasarim, when he actually made the covenant with Hashem, Abraham asked, well, Ma Yeda, how do I know, my children are going to inherit the land of Israel? What if they're not, what if they stumble, Chas v'shalom, sometimes, and they don't fulfill the lofty goals and the mitzvos of the Torah? What if they don't merit? And Hashem says they're going to merit it, and this is interesting, they're going to merit it because I'm going to put them into the Geulah. I'm going to put them into exile. And Egypt began this process of the Geulah, the exile, and the Geulah, and the redemption. And so this was the process of how we were going to inherit Eretz Yisrael. This is how we were going to inherit the land of Israel. So then, in Parsha Vayera, this is the first big Tikkun. We're starting to break out of the physical constraints, and Hashem brings the first of the 7 makos, the first of the 7 plagues. Now, these plagues correspond to the 7 lower spheros, and those spheros correspond to our midos, or our emotions. So what Hashem was doing is, in one way, he was punishing the Egyptians for them oppressing us and torturing us, and they were being punished. But the ultimate goal was Hashem wanted to fully reveal his power through these 7, lower spheros, these 7 plagues, and he wanted ultimately everyone to do teshuvah. I mean, ideally, not only were the Jewish people doing teshuvah, not only were we learning how to fix up our midos, our emotions, controlling our emotions, setting our emotions to do good in this world. There's also a hope that, Egypt too, the Egyptians themselves would learn the lesson. But it helped us. It was a tikkun for us, and we started learning the lesson, and we started fixing these emotions. So we got our emotions directed to a higher place, not sunk in the physicality of the world, but more of a ruchnius, emotions directed to spiritual growth, spiritual elevation. Okay, so then the next Parsha Bo, these are the 3 higher spheros. So these were the last 3 of the makos, and these were to fix the 3 higher spheros are the machshava, the intellect, thinking. This is to now fix a tikkun for our thoughts, directing our thoughts, not to be drawn and thinking about like the physical taivas and desires of the world, but to start to have thoughts, higher thoughts, of spiritual thoughts, and this is all getting us ready, to start growing level by level, madrega by madrega, reaching greater heights of spiritual growth. Okay, so then finally, the parsha, parsha we're in right now, Parsha Beshalach. We're about, and this Shabbos is very special. It's called Shabbos Shira. We sing the Shir Shel Yam, the song in the sea, and this is the Kriyas Yam Suf. This is the splitting of the Red Sea, the Sea of Reeds, and this is even a higher level. And the Midrashim are incredible. They describe not only was there one path through the Red Sea, but there were those 12 paths. There was one for each tribe, and the walls would become like bricks of ice, and there was like water springs, and I think there was like there was like fruit. I think there was fruit trees. Even some of the Midrashim say just miracle upon miracle on what we saw, and it's incredible. And the Meforshim they go on, and the Midrashim go on to describe that the Jewish people that experienced that miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea, they had a higher level of nevuah, of prophecy, than like Yechezkel, the great Ezekiel, who saw a vision of Hashem's Kisei Kavod, his throne of glory, and the heavenly throne room, and in Yeshaya, the great Isaiah, and Yirmiyahu. I mean, the greatest Nevi'im we had, and they say even the littlest person experienced a greater level of revelation of Hashem in the world during that Kriyas Yam Suf. Okay, but what was this level? This level was now the next step, the next higher spiritual level, which was after we get our emotions all fixed, and after we get the way we're thinking fixed, we need to have emunah. We need to take that step forward. We need to go into that spiritual life and be able to follow Hashem wherever he leads. And it can seem very scary at times. We had this whole mighty Egyptian army that had oppressed us and terrorized us we were down there a total of 210 years. And they're chasing after us, and we thought we were free, and now they're chasing after us. And then we had this mighty sea in front of us, and it didn't seem like there's any escape. So it took the bravery, it took the emunah of a Nachshon ben Aminadav, the Nasi, the prince of the tribe Yehuda, and he just walks in to the sea because he knows that Hashem's going to save us with his emunah, with his belief in the faithfulness of Hashem, that we have this connection with Hashem, and then Hashem splits everything, and all these miracles begin, and then beyond that, then we see like our enemies that have terrorized us, oppressed us, killed us, just treat us horribly, and we see the punishment given out to them. And then they came out to battle with all like the remaining jewels and gold and silver and whatever precious possessions like we didn't take out of Egypt, and all the rest wash up on the shore. And then it's very fascinating. Parsha Peshalach is so filled with amazing miracles and just going above. It's going above L'mayla min hateva, way above the natural world, and we see all kinds of incredible things. So after we saw this amazing revelation of the Shekhinah, we saw this revelation of Hashem and all His power, we started singing the Shira. We started singing the famous Song of the Sea, and we praised Hashem. And we didn't want to leave because we had everything we needed. We had this close relationship with Hashem, the highest levels of prophecy. Our enemies were destroyed. We had all kinds of riches. We had animals and just everything we needed. We had the matzah on our back from our Seder. We had everything. We didn't want to leave. Just let's build a city here by the sea. We can be around this tremendous place where we had this tremendous revelation. But it was incredible because Hashem says there's greater levels. This is not it. This is not the end of the journey. We have greater levels of spiritual heights to climb. And He took this Shekhinah, He took His Shekhinah, and He moved it out into the Midbar shore. Now, shore can mean a couple things. Shore can mean ox, but it also means shore. It can mean if the dot's on top of the vav, it's an ox, but if the dot's by the side, it's vision. And we had this great vision. And the Midrashim say that we had a vision of like all the Beis HaMikdashes, the 3 temples that would be built through all of history. And we wanted to follow the Shekhinah. We wanted to see where this journey leads, And we wander now into the desert, into the Midbar shore. Now then it's tough. Then we're in a desert, and we come to this place called Mara, and it had the bitter water, and we're scared, And the Jewish people get scared. There's nothing to drink. We're in a desert, and it seems incredible to us because they see these amazing miracles. But it's interesting. If you see a miracle yesterday, that was yesterday. If you're thirsty and think you're going to die in a desert, that's what you have to deal with today. So it's incredible because unless there's a miracle happening, and there was a lot, but when you need, you don't always want to depend on a miracle. When you're thirsty and you're scared you're going to die of thirst in a desert, you want water. So it's interesting here because we talked about that like Torah is compared to water. So one special thing that happened is Moshe saw that just as a human being can't go physically 3 days without water, he instituted that a Jewish person should never go 3 days without hearing the Torah laned from a Sefer Torah, from a Torah scroll. And that's what we do. So every Monday, every Thursday, every Shabbos, we lane the Torah, so we never go 3 days without hearing the Torah lane. And just as we need water, we also need the ruchnius. We need the life, the spiritual life force of the Torah, which is the blueprint itself for all the Ma'aseh Breshis, all creation. So then it's an incredible thing that Moshe takes this bitter wood and he throws it into the bitter water, and now the water's sweetened. And then he taught us, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, he taught us special things there. He taught us like the halachas of Shabbos. He taught us the special mitzvah, kibud av v'em, to honor your father and your mother. And he taught us a lot of the mishpatim, and we're going to see in the upcoming parsha where we'll learn a lot of the mishpatim. And the mishpatim are the mitzvahs dealing with bein adam lechavero. These are the mitzvahs that help create like good and friendly relationships between us and our families, us and our friends, us and our community around us, us and the whole world. And those are the mishpatim. So then, once again, we were hungry. We're in the desert. Those miracles were in the past, and we need food now. And then Hashem sends amazing, He sent the slav, the quail birds, but then the most miraculous thing, the manna, the bread from Shemayim. And we had this miraculous bread that would come, every day. And now we were sustained on this, once again, way beyond the level of the Teva. And then we were surrounded by the Anania Kovod, the clouds in 6 directions. So we had a cloud north, south, east, west. We had a cloud above as a roof. We had a cloud below as a floor. And then we had the pillar of cloud by day that the Shekhinah was in. And then the pillar that turned into a pillar of fire at night. And the Shekhinah was in that. And we had this miraculous relationship with Hashem. But once again, we're starving at Mei Meriva. at the Masa Umariva, it's contention, fighting, and we're thirsty again. And then Hashem gives us this more miracle, a higher level, the Be'er Miriam, the well of Miriam, this incredible rock, and it has holes in it, and spring water comes out. And so we think everything's perfect. We're at this incredible madrega, but when we don't feel, even as credible as it sounds with all these miracles, all these nisim, it can be even at that level, if we don't feel Hashem's protecting us, if we don't feel Hashem's with us, then it opens the door for our arch enemies. They reared their ugly head in the 20th century as the Nazis, but our ancient enemy Amalek. And they are just as we are we are the ones that hold up the Torah, do the mitzvos in this world. Amalek wants to rip it all down. Amalek's fighting his war, against Hashem until the final battle when evil will be defeated. And then we think we can't go any higher, and we get to Parsha Yisro. And then we have the Matan Torah, and we stand at the bottom of Mount Sinai, and we actually hear this infinite being speak. We hear Hashem speak to us as a nation, and he speaks the Asara Dibros, the 10 Commandments. And then we were supposed to, receive 40 days later the miraculous sapphire luchos with the 10 Commandments. And unfortunately, the whole Chet HaEgel, we're not going to go into that so much right now, but we get them eventually. We get the second set on Yom Kippur. And then Mishpatim is all the incredible mitzvos. We talked about a little bit, like the mitzvos of how to get along with each other. And then, because it's a special year, we have Truma and Tetzaveh. So we have Truma, which is the instructions of how to build the Mishkan, how to build the traveling, tabernacle, or it's really a miniature traveling temple throughout the desert, and all the kalim, everything that's used in the Mishkan, for instance, like the Mizbeach, the copper Mizbeach, the animal, the korbanos were sacrificed on, and then the golden little Mizbeach inside where the Keturas, the great 11 spices were offered on, the famous menorah, the shulchan where the lechem apanim, the special breads were put, and then behind the curtain, is the Aron HaKodesh, the Ark of the Covenant with the gold cheruvim, the gold angels on top, and then the Shekinah, Hashem rested there, and the Torah, the Sefer Torah is inside, the luchos, the sapphire tablets are inside. And then Hashem actually spoke to Moshe from on top of the Aron HaKodesh. So that's building the Mishkan, and then Tetzaveh is the instructions for how to make the big day kahuna, the clothes for all the Kohanim and the Kohen Gadol. So now we have everything we need. We have the full Geulah process, and the Ramban, he explains that for it to be the full Geulah, it's not just leaving Egypt. It's not just even going to Har Sinai and the Matan Torah and receiving the Torah. It's not only just learning the Torah and doing the mitzvos. The whole goal, the full Geulah, the Geulah Shlema that we're looking forward to so much, is that where we live and Hashem is living in our midst. The Shekinah of Hashem, we're living with Hashem. The Torah teaches how we can spiritually elevate ourselves so we can live with this infinite being right in our community, and that the world can see this, and then the whole world can be elevated, and that's where we can finally get to the beautiful prophecies, beating the swords and the plowshares, spears and the pruning hooks, and we can have a world at peace. But the final step of the journey is going into Eretz Yisrael, as Abraham, was promised by Hashem. And when we elevate ourselves enough, and especially in this beautiful time of the Shovavim, and we can do it, and we can elevate ourselves today by eating the fruits of Tu B'Shvat, and just remembering that it's all from Hashem, and thanking Hashem through the brachos. And then Mizrat Hashem, we will merit all the Jewish people to move back to Eretz Yisrael. We'll see the coming of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, and then we can finally build that final Beis HaMikdash, that final temple, where Hashem can live in the midst of all the Jewish people. But even incredibly enough, you think that this is not high enough level, I believe the Nevuah talks about in the days of Moshe Mashiach that eventually we're going to reach such a level that we'll be back at the level of the Avos, back at the level of Avraham and Sarah, Abraham and Sarah, Yitzhak and Rivka, Isaac and Rebekah, and Yaakov and Rachel and Leah, Jacob and Leah and Rachel, and that where they were like the themselves were like just like the Aron HaKodesh has that function. When we make ourselves into Sefer Torah, the Shekinah can rest on us too. The Shekinah can live right in us, not even just on top of the Ark of the Covenant and the Beis HaMikdash, but he can live like literally in like the Jewish people. We can have such spiritual elevation. I know it seems so incredible in the times we live in, but this is the great power of Tu B'Shvat. So enjoy some fruit, make a bracha, and Bizrat Hashem will see great things, and it will really take advantage of this period of Shovavim, and we can fix what needs to be fixed, and we can see great things in the future. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you back again soon on Sweet Good Torah.